Well, hello, friends. Hello, everybody. I am Dean the Turkey Legster, and welcome back to the channel. This is Thursday night tonight, Thursday, January the 30th of 2025, and welcome to Once Upon a Turkey Leg. This is the place. Every Thursday you can come to listen to a story, unwind for the night, relax a little bit. I do want to say hello. I've got some friends in the chat watching here on the live stream tonight. If you're watching this later, um, 9 o'clock Eastern time every Thursday night is when this happens live. So you're more than welcome to come back and try to catch me live and chat a little bit while I read the stories. But if you're watching on the replay, leave me a comment. Let me know in there in that you were watching and say hello. So let me say hello. Let me scroll up and say hello to friends in the chat. I see Dawn, the Hitchhiking Bones. Welcome in. Hello. Greetings and welcome. I hope you've had a gobbletastic day as well. I have. Tina McNeil is in here. Hello, Tina. And hello, Chuck. Listening or watching later. Jonathan Chong, hello. Welcome in. Happy Thursday. Mark Langenkamp, hello. Welcome in. Great to have you in here. I want to acknowledge what Tina said here. Just a second. Let me say hello, Jason Thibodeau. Welcome in. And hello, Najuma Brown. Hello. Welcome in, all of you people. I see Tina, what Tina said here. Richard Blumenchiza losing his aunt, uncle, and 3 cousins in the plane collision last night. It was already heartbreaking to hear about that tragedy that happened in DC. The plane and the helicopter, very heartbreaking. But to hear about someone in our community, I'll definitely reach out to Richard, which is a quick word of condolence. But here on the stream, I do want to say, Richard, if you watch this or are watching, my thoughts and prayers are out to you, buddy. Yeah, I that is very heartbreaking indeed. Gloria Thibodeau, welcome in. Hello. Jeanette, Sebastian, the crowd, hello, welcome in. Jay and N Travels, John and Nancy, hello, hello. The Curtis family, hello to my favorite Chris. Are you my favorite Chris? You're my favorite Chris. Yes, Tina, I will. So anyway, welcome in everybody. Chris, I found out Tina had just put in the chat that Richard Blumenchiza in the chats lost several family members in the the crash that happened in DC. Was it yesterday or the day before? So that's what happened. So Blumenchiza in the chats, Richard, definitely in our prayers. And and for all the families, affected as well. Um, what a what a tragedy. Um, so anyway, well, we're here to listen to some stories, and so I hope you all are ready to hear some stories. That's what we're here for. So that's what we're going to do. So get ready, get relaxed, get your snack, get your warm milk or whatever you want to drink tonight, or just sit back and listen with your warm blankie, and we're going to listen to some stories. Um, Tonight we are hearing Walt Disney's Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Da 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 da. Hi, Dave. Da 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 dee dee. Do 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 do. Once upon a time, there lived a lovely princess named Snow White. Her wicked stepmother, the queen, dreaded that some day Snow White would be more beautiful than she was. Every day the queen asked her magic mirror, "Who is the fairest one of all?" And every day the mirror replied, "You are." But one day the mirror gave a different answer. "Snow White," it said. The queen was enraged. She ordered the royal huntsman to take Snow White into the woods and kill her. With Snow White dead, the queen would be the most beautiful woman in the kingdom again. But the huntsman couldn't bring himself to harm Snow White. When they got to the forest, he told the princess how much the queen hated her. "Run away," he told her. "Hide." Snow White turned and ran away as quickly as she could. But the woods were scary. Branches seemed to reach for her, and roots tripped her. She felt as if eyes were staring at her from the darkness. Snow White screamed. Then she fell and buried her head in fear. That is a very good question, Mark. Question, Mark. Mark, that is a very good question. In the morning, Snow White lifted her head. She saw eyes watching her, but this time they were the friendly eyes of bunnies, deer, chipmunks, birds, and raccoons. Snow White was glad she wasn't alone anymore. "Please don't run away." Sorry, I won't do the voice. "Please don't run away," she said. "I won't hurt you." Snow White knew she could never return to the castle. What would she do? Where would she go? "Maybe the animals can help me," she thought. "I need a place to sleep at night," she said. The animals looked at each other. The birds took her cape in their beaks and guided her forward. Soon they came to a clearing in the woods. Beneath the trees stood a charming little cottage. "Just like a doll house!" Snow White cried. She peeked in the window. No one was home. The animals nodded at her, seeming to say it was all right for her to go inside. Snow White pushed the door open. Inside the cottage, dishes were piled high in the sink, and clothes were tossed about. The floor hadn't been swept in ages. Snow White counted the tiny chairs at the table and decided 7 children must live in the cottage. 7 untidy children, she said with a shake of her head. Snow White grabbed a broom. We'll clean the house and surprise them, she said to the animals. Then maybe they'll let me stay. She started to sweep, singing all the while. The raccoons washed the clothes, the deer dusted, and the chipmunks tidied. In no time, the room was spotless. After the cleaning was done, Snow White became curious about the rest of the cottage. Let's see what's up the stairs, she said. She lit a candle and climbed up the steps. At the top was a door. Snow White went into a room with 7 little beds. Each bed had a name carved on it. Doc, Happy, Sneezy, Dopey, Snow White said with a laugh. What funny names for children! She read on. Grumpy, Bashful, and Sleepy. By then, Snow White was feeling awfully sleepy herself. She lay down across 3 of the small beds. The birds covered her with a blanket, and minutes later, the princess was fast asleep. Before long, the owners of the cottage returned. They were not children at all. They were dwarfs. When they opened the door, they couldn't believe their eyes. The whole house is clean, Doc exclaimed. Nervously, the dwarfs tiptoed upstairs. An intruder was in their house. They went in, and Doc slowly pulled the blanket away that had been covering Snow White. Why, it's a girl, he said. All females are poison, Grumpy insisted. As Snow White began to wake up, the nervous dwarfs hid. They peeked over at her they peeked at her over the footboards. The princess yawned and sat up. Startled, she caught sight of the dwarfs' faces. Oh, you're little men, she cried. Now don't tell me who you are. Let me guess. One by one, she matched the names on the beds to the dwarfs. She got all of them right on the first try. Snow White told the dwarfs how she had run through the woods and how the queen wanted to kill her. She won't find me here, the princess promised. I'll wash and keep house and cook. The dwarfs imagined the apple dumplings and gooseberry pies that Snow White could make. She stays, they agreed. That night, after a delicious dinner, the dwarfs and Snow White yodeled and sang. Then she danced with her new friends. The dwarfs had never had so much fun or laughed so hard. When they stopped singing and dancing, Sleepy turned to Snow White. Tell us a story, he said. Snow White, told them about a princess who had fallen in love with a prince she'd met at a wishing well. Was it you? They asked, and she nodded, sighing dreamily. Her dearest wish was to see him again some day. The dwarfs let Snow White sleep in their beds. In the morning, as the dwarfs got ready to go to work, they worried about leaving Snow White alone. "I'll be all right," Snow White said. Then she kissed each of the dwarfs goodbye, and one of them she kissed twice. I added that line myself. "I'm warning you, don't let nobody or nothing in the house," Grumpy ordered. That afternoon, forgetting Grumpy's warning, Snow White allowed a poor old woman into the house. Into the house. The woman gave her an apple, perfectly red and shiny. "Go on, have a bite," she urged. But the apple was not an ordinary apple, and the old woman was not an ordinary woman. She was the evil queen in disguise, and the fruit had been poisoned. Snow White's animal friends, tried to warn her not to trust the woman, but she didn't understand. She reached out, raised the apple to her lips, and took a bite. "Oh, I feel strange," she cried, and fell to the floor. When the dwarfs returned to the house, they found their friend and thought she was dead. They had no way of knowing that the spell the queen had used was for a sleeping death, or that love's first kiss could wake up Snow White. The dwarfs built her a beautiful coffin and set it in the woods, where all her animal friends could visit her. The dwarfs built her a beautiful coffin and set it in the woods. Oh, wait, I saw that. I read that. Sorry. One day, a prince came by, the same prince that Snow White had met by the wishing well. He gazed at the girl in the glass coffin and knew her as the princess he loved. The princess lifted the glass lid, bent down, and kissed her. Slowly she awakened. The prince lifted her in his arms. The prince lifted her in his arms. Around them, the dwarfs and animals danced and hugged and jumped for joy. Their friend was alive again, and her true love had found her. "Goodbye," Snow White said, and kissed each of the dwarfs. She was leaving to marry the prince, but she knew she would visit her good friends again soon. And that is the end of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Our first story here on the stream tonight. Da, 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 do, 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 do. Welcome in, Mandy Adams. Hello. And welcome back in, Dawn. Na, 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 da, na, 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 na. Now, our second story tonight is featuring our friends once again from the world of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. This story is called Grumpy's Not Sleepy. Hmm. Deep in the forest, inside a small cottage, Snow White and the seven dwarfs were finishing their supper. Now, everyone, put your dishes in the tub, Snow White instructed. Clickety clack, clickety clack went the dishes as one by one the dwarfs placed them in the wooden washing tub. Clickety clack, clickety clack, achoo! Bless you, Sneezy, Snow White said. That wasn't me, Sneezy said. Then who was it? Snow White asked. It was achoo! Me, achoo! Grumpy grumbled through a chorus of sneezes. Ooh. Snow White put a hand to Grumpy's forehead. Oh dear, she said, you're quite warm. Up to bed with you right now. Snow White and the dwarfs marched Grumpy upstairs and tucked him into bed. Get some sleep, Grumpy, she said. It will make you feel better. This is achoo! Ridiculous, Grumpy said. I am not sick. Achoo! Achoo! And I have things to do. Do you think that pipe organ is going to achoo, clean itself? Thank you, Mark. We'll clean it for you, Happy offered. The other dwarfs nodded in agreement. You won't do it right, Grumpy said, trying to get out of bed. I'm sure they'll do a fine job, Snow White said. Now, how about a nice song to help you sleep? Snow White tucked Grumpy back into bed and began to sing softly to him. Soon his eyes began to close. He was almost asleep when toot 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 the loud sound came from downstairs. Grumpy's eyes flew open. My pipe organ, he shouted. I knew they'd mess it up. It's almost asleep. But Snow White hurried downstairs. You're making too much noise, she told the dwarfs. But it's a pipe organ, Sleepy pointed out. We can't clean it without making any uh, noise. I know, Doc said. We can stuff the pipes. Now that's a swell idea, Happy agreed. Dopey, grab some socks. While Snow White went back up to check on Grumpy, Dopey picked up some socks from the laundry pile. The dwarfs rolled them into balls and stuffed them into the organ pipes. Then Doc ran a rag over the keys. Pop, pop, pop! The rolled up socks flew out of the organ pipes. Bang, bang, bang! The socks hit the hanging pots and pans. Toot, toot, toot! The organ sang. So there's the first picture. And all the commotion. I heard that, Grumpy yelled from upstairs. How do you expect me to sleep with all that racket? Achoo! Snow White went back downstairs to see the dwarfs. Maybe cleaning the pipe organ can wait until after Grumpy's rested, she said. Why don't you each pick out a book to read? That's a nice quiet thing to do. Now that's a good my dear. Now that's a good my dear. I mean a good idea, Doc said. The dwarfs hurried to the bookshelves. I'd like to read the book about trees, Bashful said shyly. I want to hear the story about the treasure. Achoo! Sneezy said, standing on his tiptoes to reach over Bashful. I'll take the book about birds, Happy said, reaching over Sneezy. Sleepy reached over Happy. I'd like that book of, yawn, bedtime stories. Doc reached over Sleepy. Dopey and I will read the... We'll read the... We'll read the... Doc tripped and fell into Sleepy, who crashed into Happy, who knocked over Sneezy and Bashful, who fell into the bookshelf. The books fell to the floor with a crash. I heard that, Grumpy yelled downstairs. Oh dear, Snow White said. Perhaps you should go outside so poor Grumpy can get some sleep. Snow White shooed the dwarfs into the yard, then went upstairs to check on Grumpy. My, my. What do we do now? Happy asked. Maybe we could find a way to help Snow White, Bashful suggested shyly. A fine idea, Doc said, looking around. These windows look like they could use washing. That sounds helpful. The dwarfs got to work. Dopey fetched water from the stream. Happy and Sleepy got the ladder. Bashful got some rags. Then Sneezy climbed the ladder, holding the bucket and the rags. All right there, Sneezy, Doc called up. Start scrubbing. Doc, Bashful said quietly, are you sure it's a good idea to send Sneezy up there? He'll be fine, Doc said. What could go wrong? What could go wrong? Achoo! Sneezy let out a great big sneeze and fell off the ladder. right into Happy and Sleepy's waiting arms. The latter crashed into the laundry line, and the clean laundry fell into the mud. The water bucket landed on a basket of potatoes, which spilled on the ground. As the dwarfs tried to get out of the way, they tripped over the potatoes. I heard that, Grumpy yelled from his bed. Snow White came outside. I suppose it's no use asking you to be quiet any more, she said, but please clean up this mess. The dwarfs nodded. While Snow White went in to take care of Grumpy, they got to work. They re-washed all the laundry and hung it out to dry. They picked up the potatoes and they fixed the ladder and the bucket. Soon they were all yawning. All this work is making me sleepy, Sleepy said. Me too, agreed Doc. Bashful, Happy, and Sneezy, and Dopey nodded. I think you all could use a nice nap, Snow White said, walking outside again. The dwarfs didn't argue. They marched upstairs, and Snow White tucked them into their beds. Soon they were all snoring peacefully, even Grumpy. And that is the second and final story on the stream tonight. Hope you all enjoyed that very much. I enjoyed that very much. Um, yeah, so that's the stream for tonight. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. I'll be back next Thursday with more Once Upon a Turkey Leg and more stories. Um, and of course, I'll be back Tuesday for Let's Talk Turkey. That's Tuesday at 9 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Hope you'll make plans to come back and gonna chat about a really interesting subject. And explore some things about Walt Disney World um, in the future. So come back and we'll enjoy that. And then next Thursday, of course, more stories here on the channel. So if you have not already, once again, I'm going to repeat it. Pop that like button, the thumbs up. If you're watching this on the replay, thank you so much. Leave a comment. Thank you so much to everyone in the live chat, in the live, watching live. Really do appreciate that. And that's going to do it. So guys, have a gobbletastic, wonderful evening. And I will see you really soon next time. Take care.